Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again. All right, welcome listeners. You get Ben-Jamin today. I'm gonna have to bring the energy from both of us. So pretty much I'm gonna take a nap after this one. Joined by my good friend and colleague, Trevor Crunelle. Glad to have you on the podcast today.
Ben-Jamin, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for hosting me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So today it's going to be fun because Trevor actually works with the Cohesion Culture team, runs his own business, and we'll talk about that a little later towards the end, and has a wealth of knowledge that he can talk about. But as you know, and you've gotten used to, we're going to make some connections before content. So Trevor, want to let our audience know something that if they were to get to know you well, it still may be surprising that you have this interest or hobby. Share something that is like a shocker that you have an interest in that people may not realize.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a shocker, but I think it's something that, is not, I guess that common, but you wouldn't think about when you think about other things that I commonly do. But I love vegetable gardening. And this year, for the first time, and this is really on my mind now because of the time of year it is here, I have grown all of my plants from seed. So back in mid-January or so, I started some of the peppers and tomatoes and, kind of had to space out when I planted which seeds, and I've nurtured them up to their nice sized seedlings now. And just this weekend, I started putting some out in the garden.
Oh, wow. Now, are you using a certain type? Are they heirloom? Okay, I don't even know what heirloom means. What does heirloom mean as far as when it goes to vegetables?
I believe heirloom, to get that designation, means that there's been no genetic alteration of the seed. That's my.
So you're not using broccoli then, right?
Right. And the big thing I think too is all heirloom seeds. When you grow that plant, if you get a fruit from it, or vegetable, you can then take those seeds, dry them out, replant them, and they'll grow. Or a lot of the genetically engineered seeds are not like that. You can't replant those seeds.
Gotcha.
I don't know exactly why, but that's just my limited.
We'll save that for another podcast on going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a cool one. We try to do some plants at home, and they don't really work. But the seeds that we feed the birds with, they happen to grow well somehow.
Yes.
Anything we attempt to dies, and that these random things. But so that's crazy. They get plenty of water. All right. Another thing. So I want to know who you are. What is your identity as far as this behavior and character traits that you want to be known as, or you are known as, not so much roles you've had. We'll get into the roles of who you are, but share with the listeners who you are.
Who I. Well, I want to be just a genuine, honest person. I want to be the type person that when, I tell you something, and say I'm going to do something, I follow through with it and make sure it happens, and that people feel comfortable following.
Awesome. What about other? How would somebody else describe you to somebody? Like when someone's making an introduction, what would they say?
I think a lot of times they say that I'm fairly low key, but I'm. One of the skills I believe I've worked on and tried to bring out, or is that I listen a lot, and can put a lot of effort into hearing what people are saying and understanding that.
And I would say that I would concur with that scenario. I would, to some degree, almost say you are the definition of speaking softly with carrying a big stick. You are a calm, quiet person, and when I hear you interact or make a statement, it's like, okay, did you guys hear that? So I love that scenario. Whereas it's all too common in the facilitating world or the coaching world where it's larger than life personalities. And so I guess that'll be a great segue. So tell us some of your R's then, like historically, what your R's have been, roles and hats that you have. Go big picture life, right?
Okay.
And then what are you currently doing?
So big picture, I went to Northwestern University on a naval ROTC scholarship. So when I got out of college, I owed the Navy 4 years, which was a great experience. So I spent my first 4 years, in the working world as a naval officer. From there, I went into medical device sales and service. My undergraduate degree is biomedical engineering.
Oh, wow.
So I worked for medical device companies for 29 years, starting out as in the field, clinical engineering roles, and moving into sales and sales management roles. While I was doing that, when I first started in the medical device world, I also went back to night school and got a master's degree in business and management. And then I retired from that career about a little over 4 years ago. I was fortunate enough that, I was in a position where I could retire and do something. I call this now what I'm doing as a coach, my twilight career, because I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's something that really has drawn me to learn a lot more. In fact, when I first started doing this, I told my wife, I have not been this intellectually stimulated in a long time, because my job in the medical device role kind of got, it was always different. We were always learning, but it was kind of the same thing in a way, where when I retired from that and started my coaching business, I just have been taking in so much that it really has been a joy for me. And so that's why I'm now. I've been now as the growth coach of the Low Country for the last 4.5 years.
That's awesome. And that's actually how we met. As we were expanding our Cohesion Culture program, looking for additional consultants to be facilitators. Our goal is we're looking for folks that have their own businesses, that have bandwidth and that already have a mindset that can learn our material. And that's how we connected. And there's some mutual alignment there, so that you believe in the cohesion world that we have. You were also a disc facilitator as well.
I am, yeah. And that's one of the things I never really had known or spent any time on before I started coaching, and really see a lot of value in that for self-awareness. It's where it started, with the self-awareness that it helped me create, and then seeing how you can apply that to your team and taking it from there. So that's a cornerstone in my coaching, is understanding yourself and your team through DISC.
That's awesome. All right. So for the namesake, what was a experience that you're prepared to share to our listeners that could hopefully benefit them? These are folks that are hoping to grow, develop, and advance in their career, or don't have a plan for their growth and want to see how they can be mentored through mistakes.
Yeah, one that I always think about, because it happened so early in my career, but it was just a very important lesson that I had to learn. I kind of learned it the hard way. There wasn't anything bad that came out of it, but it was a lesson that was not easy for me to learn at first. And I guess I can set it up a little bit by saying, when I went to report to my first ship in the Navy, the USS Moosebrugger, it was at that time in Guantanamo Bay doing what we call refresher training. So I had to fly into Gitmo Airport and meet my ship there. I was going in as a division officer. That's where all junior officers start on a ship, as a division officer. So they have usually 15 to 25 men under them working in a division. My division I was going to be the gunnery officer. And the officer I was relieving from that position, normally you'd go in and you'd work with the current division officer for at least a couple of weeks to get some turnover, get a feel for how things are going, learn the ropes, the men. The guy I was relieving was leaving at the same day that I flew in. So I flew in on a flight talk to him for about 10 minutes and get my airport. And then he got on that same flight I just got off of and came back stateside. So I didn't get a whole lot of turnover there, and coming in fresh out of training, I thought I knew everything. So I report to the ship. And at that point also, I'm the now division officer. Also, most divisions have at least one or two chief petty officers who lead the division. So they're the more senior enlisted men. The division I was taking over had lost their chief petty officer a month or so ago, and he hadn't been replaced yet. So I had what we then called a lead petty officer, who was also a more senior enlisted man, but not the seniority of what the chief petty officers have. And when I was trying to get a feel for, how this division runs, how things work on the ship, one of the, I've been there maybe a couple of weeks, and one of the men in my division came in one evening to my office just complaining about the way the lead petty officer was assigning their work and kind of some of the things he was doing. And I listened to him and said, yeah, I think I agree with you. I think you're right. We're going to change that. So I went in the next day, and made some changes as to how that process was being set up, how they were doing it. Without really having the understanding or knowledge of why they were doing that and if there was a good reason for this, any of that. Just because I thought it sounded good, the man took the time to come talk to me about it, I'd fix it. Well, that wasn't the right thing to do because, there was a reason that he was assigning their tasks like he was, why it was working. This one man was just not happy with it. But I kind of used my power as a division officer to change it without getting advice and guidance from the senior enlisted men who were there and been doing this for a while. So the lead petty officer just kind of shook his head and, said, okay, sir, that's what we'll do, because that's what you do in the military. When an officer tells you to do something, pretty much you do it. He was following what he should do. But then the next day, one of the chief petty officers from another division came to me and had to sit me down and say, Mr. Crunelle, I know you don't have a chief petty officer, but this is, I'm going to try to help you understand a little better how we can help you and your division work better by relying on the leading petty officers you have in your division. You can rely on some of the other chiefs in divisions around that. So he gave me a very meaningful talking to about how I needed to rely on they're really like the middle managers for the division there.
Okay.
And so that was my lesson that I learned, and I had to go back and change then what I had told the guy who came to me initially about what I wasn't happy about. I said, we're going to go back to the way we've been doing it. I went back to the lead petty officer and apologized to him. Said, I came in not knowing, and I pulled rank basically, and that wasn't the right thing to do. I understand now that I need to rely more on you. And we had a great working relationship from then on. But I think there was the big things that I learned from that was, one, you have to rely on the people that have been in that position and been, doing that for a while. You don't have to do what they say, but you have to collaborate with them. And
all right, well, let's unpack that a little more. So you make this decision, you get a knee-jerk reaction, you get a subordinate or someone that says, I have a problem, you don't get information, you make a change. What did that cost you? You making this and making this change automatically. What did it cost you, either professionally or social capitally, financially? What was the cost?
The cost that I saw immediately was from the man who came to me and, was complaining about it. When I said, okay, we're going to do this different, he went back to the berthing area, told everyone else, and they were all happy with it. Some of the really junior enlisted men. So right there, I got some credibility with them because, oh yeah, Mr. Crunelle is going to listen to what we say. He's going to do with this, it's going to be better for us. But that wasn't where I needed to be. I needed to be getting more credibility with their leading petty officers and chief petty officers. So what it lost me at that initially was, I thought, oh, okay, here comes this ensign that's going to be a jerk and not paying attention to what we had to say. So it took me a while then to build back up some credibility, I think, with those other leading petty officers and chief petty officers, which I did. But it took time and effort, which in the long run probably taught me also that, investing in those relationships and taking the time to build them is what helped me then overcome that kind of deficit that I started with.
So you have you make this reaction. You originally get some love from the other team, and then you lose the credibility from your superiors or the peers, and you take some time to build yourself back up there. What was the process of that? Was it hat in hand? Was it explaining when you went back to the folks that were originally happy? Did you then sit down and explain the why to them? Or was it just like, I'm sorry, they do it for a reason, and that's just the way it is? Like, how did that happen? How did you speak both languages?
Yeah, probably not very well at that point.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. This was a while ago. I think I definitely did not go into the why as much as if I were to do this again now, I would.
That's a great segue here is like, what would you do to prevent this from now? So now let's put your brain in now into how you would handle situation. What would you do differently?
Oh, definitely. I would hear what their complaint was, understand that from their point of view, but then go to the leading petty officers, the chief petty officers, and discuss it with them, get their input, understand from them what their why is, why they're doing it like that, and kind of gauge that and make sure that makes sense. If I think we needed to tweak something, then we would tweak that there and then take it down the next level instead of me just making the command decision without that collaboration knowledge.
That's up. So listeners, Trevor's doing a great job of saying why someone's doing something as the motivating reason. And you've heard us probably say before is that when we want to find the motivation or the rationale behind it, we want to find the why, but we don't want to actually ask the why questions, right? We want to ask, what was the procedure? What were the factors? How was this done, right? Because when you find the motivation behind it, you allow that self-discovery. You mentioned, Trevor, early on, self-discovery through DISC, but you can also do process discovery when you do the how or what questions, right? You don't want to say, we want to know why they did it, but what often happens when you ask someone why initially?
They get kind of defensive because you feel like you're questioning, not really, you're questioning their motives or their integrity is how most people interpret that initially.
Yeah. And so, and most likely back then you probably said, hey, why do you do it this way? And they're like, well, just because some might've been, that's the way it's always been done. Right.
Right.
And that reminds me of the whole Thanksgiving dinner when they see the ham, the grandma or the mom cuts off the edges of the ham and the granddaughter says, well, why'd you do that? It's like, oh, that's how my mother always did. And they go to the grandma and it's like, well, that's all we always did it. They go to the great grandma and they ask, why'd you cut the ends off the hams? Like, I never had a pan big enough. Right. So we get in this mindset of doing things. And I wasn't in the military. It's sometimes the case that you guys just get into the habit of doing things because it's always been done that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I think there's more awareness now than there was back then when I was a junior officer. But yes, that was often the answer if you asked, why we were doing something for some reason. It was because that's the way we were told to, or that's the way we've always done it.
So now in your twilight career as a growth coach, how do you handle those types of process improvements or questions on the individual? Like, how do you phrase those things? How do you go after trying to get into the thick of things?
One of the questions I like to ask is, help me understand. Help me understand why you did that, or not why. Help me understand what's going on here. Help me understand how we can change this, how we can make it better. That I think that help me understand really helps people be less, what do I want to say, less,
I'd say defensive, right? I mean,
yeah, less defensive. Yes. More open, allows them a little more to be a little more vulnerable, I think, which is what those tough conversations, you have to get vulnerable on both sides to get those tough conversations out in the open and get through them.
Now, for me, I've sometimes have to start by explaining, like when I'm working with somebody or working with a group, to let them know how brains think differently, how we interpret data differently. And I am of a very small, minute percentage. When asked to do a task, I typically do it less than 10% of the way that the population would do it, right? So I instinctively do things differently, but that's the way it makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I start that. It's like when I say that help me understand, it's like, because I'm aware that I think differently than the majority of folks, I truly need to understand your rationale behind this plus, so I can make sense, so I can get to your side of things. Because if I don't, sometimes my behavior style, when I just say help me understand, it's more of a, okay, you're an idiot. Let's figure it out. And I've had to learn that question, because I love that question too. Have you learned that you have to work your tone in any way, or is it just me because I'm a high D?
No, there's definitely tone and body language all play into that for sure. And I think knowing, particularly if I'm working with a client and running into questions like that, I know their disc style too. So I have that in the back of my mind as to how I can phrase things.
Right. So overall, though, we said, how would you do the thing now that you're not in the military? How would you go through a process when you're working with a client and there's a he said, she said scenario? What are the processes you now go with not in the military to handle a situation like that?
Yeah, I think the big difference there is, because in the military, particularly if it was, the enlisted men under me in my division, I could just make the decision and they had to follow it. I mean, that's the military way. So now in the civilian world, you don't have that understanding, that almost luxury of, okay, I say it, so that's what you got to do. So I think just being more able to hear both sides and help them understand each other and what that compromise is going to look like in the middle, or what makes the most sense. Maybe there's no compromise. Maybe the way one person wants to do it is definitely right, the other's wrong, but you have to help them come to that conclusion themselves, because I can't tell them.
That's what I was actually just about to ask something about compromise. And you brought that up, is that sometimes it's not the compromise. It is getting to that solution and agreement together. Right. There's pulling rank, but you're running a volunteering army, right? So you could pull rank all you want and they could pull their service, yes. They're not committed for 3 more years or something like that. So it makes a world of difference. So
I can't restrict their liberty for that day.
Yeah. I can make life tough for you, but they can always make it worse for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a big one. Oh, that's great. Where have the biggest, okay, then you're in sales and then you transition from sales into this. And I actually can relate totally to the, not being mentally stimulated. I was in sales for a container trucking company for a while, and it pretty much got to the phone. I make a phone call, get a deal, because they would always try price out and then go from there. Like I didn't feel like I was doing much in that aspect. And then going out and doing my own thing, I'm like, wow, there's a whole more, I can be challenged. I can make less money, but feel better about it because I'm working differently.
Right.
How has this career been more of an impact to you by having to work a little harder, maybe?
I think because a lot of the things that I have to do to become a coach, or to grow this practice, like understanding disc assessments and how they apply and applying them to myself, that is where what has really helped me, I think, kind of bridge that gap.
I would say that's a big one. I mean, knowing when driving forces that disc offers, and the behavior characteristics, and making those bridges. I've loved watching you connect with folks, and you do it in a great way. And it's so interesting because we are different in several ways, and I love learning from you when you're working with clients. So last thing, any parting words or wisdom that you would love somebody in their career looking to grow, develop, and advance? What are the things that they should focus on or not neglect as they're moving forward in their career?
I think, well, it's kind of one of the things I always think of is the conversation you and I were having shortly before we came on, is about consistency. Is whatever you're doing, do it consistently. If you're setting those goals, whatever it is, be consistent about what you're doing. Because I think that we all have these great ideas and things we think we'll do, but find a way to be consistent with what you're doing. And if that is not taking you in the right direction, then don't be afraid to pivot.
That's a great question. That's a great segue in this one, because consistency doing the wrong thing can be a challenge. So how do you suggest someone know when to pivot or when to reflect and say this isn't going the way we want, versus the acres of diamond scenario where you're just so close to pushing through? How do you coach somebody when perseverance and grit is what's needed versus the insanity side of things?
I think one thing is that you have to have you have to be able to take the time to reflect, and I call it doing a reality check. You have to do a reality check and see what your reality is there. Where are you really? Not where you want to be, not where you think you might be. Where are you? And then you have to look back and see if where you've come from, if that's where you want to be, and if where you are now in that reality check, if that's still taking you to your end goal.
Great. It's always keep it alive, check the pulse, or check the pulse, keep it alive. I love that scenario. So awesome. How would listeners be able to get in touch with you or find you?
An easy way is on LinkedIn. I'm the only Trevor Crunelle on LinkedIn. Or my email is tcrunelle@thegrowthcoach.com.
And for the listeners, that's Crunelle. So awesome. And by finding Growth Coach of the Low Country, will they find you that way?
Google that also. Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I guess I got to say it all myself as we finish all Cohesion Culture events or activities, reminding you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable.